Susie Singer Carter is an award-winning filmmaker who has spent the past 3 years focusing on reforming long-term care through her documentary No Country for Old People, after her mother suffered and died as a direct result of egregious nursing home neglect and abuse. She's currently mobilizing the ROAR movement, which stands for Respect, Opportunity, Advocacy, Reform, and working with collaborators, which she affectionately calls her Roariers, to create change in the long-term care system. Susie, you've noted that statistics alone don't drive change. Stories touch hearts and motivate action. You're a big believer in that. How can we, who aren't filmmakers, effectively use personal stories to transform long-term care from a policy issue into a human imperative?
Right. Well, thank you, Dawn. And I wanted to just give a little bit of my understanding of why stories are so powerful. And Melissa, turning pain into purpose is my mantra. I have lived that since my experience with my mom. And what I know is that, and what I've learned, because so many people have shared their stories with me, is that some people just can't share them openly, and that's okay because they are painful, like you were just saying, Dawn, and and that, that's okay. Everyone can do what they can do. But if you can, stories are powerful. They're so powerful. And I just wanted to talk about the core reason why I've spent the past 3 years working and producing this documentary, because when I went through this journey, I had literally no idea this world that I'd stepped into. I was literally sucker punched, and I couldn't wrap my head around it, but I also couldn't unsee what I saw. And I knew I couldn't compartmentalize this away. So I decided to share my story because I wanted other people to know, to be aware, and to at least be forewarned. And also being a filmmaker, I knew the power of stories that I've told before that have made such a great impact that, one of the things that they do is they humanize issues, because you can hear data all day long and you can listen to reports on the news or a Vice report, and it's data, and data doesn't connect. It just doesn't touch the heart. It doesn't spark empathy, and it really doesn't drive change, because you need people to drive change. And if you can't touch and move people, you're not going to get that change. So the other thing that I found that these stories do is that they amplify voices, personal narratives that have come from residents and family members and caregivers and frontline workers. And that empowers people and validates their experience, and it inspires others to speak out. It gives people that can't or thought they couldn't, possibly the courage to share their story. It can shape public perception, because stories challenge stereotypes. We have ableism and ageism in long-term care, and that's one of the narratives that we need to shift. And we can do that. We can do that with story, because we're talking about real narratives, real journeys, and those are powerful. And those stories can also influence, like Don was saying, policy. Policymakers are much more likely to be moved by compelling stories than by facts alone. If you go in with your heart on a platter and let them know exactly what you went through, that's going to be much more powerful than a spreadsheet. They also foster empathy. It breaks down barriers and fosters a sense of community, of humanity, and those kinds of tribes that I call them. That's how you can advocate for change. Those are the powerful tools, come from your tribes, and that inspires action. And that's why we are creating this movement, ROAR, because stories help mobilize other supporters. It takes those stories to create emotional investment. It can turn passive observers into active participants to fight, and in particularly in long-term care, to fight for better care standards. We can also use, stories in educating and training. Stories can be powerful tools for caregiving training. They provide context where textbooks don't have that. You can't create that story in a textbook. They also create accountability. When you share stories publicly, institutions are held accountable. And that's when a systemic failure is exposed by a personal account, it becomes harder for the organization to ignore or dismiss the problem. And I also think it also helps to foster resilience. So when other people hear stories of others who have gone through the same similar challenges, it can provide hope, it can provide validation, it lets you know that you're not alone, and can help provide strategies for coping. And that's so, so important. I know most of us have experienced, post-traumatic stress going through this because of all the not only the journey that your loved one went through, but the retaliation, the gaslighting, all those things that you're playing whack-a-mole with. It's so much. It's so much to deal with when you have no idea what the system is and how much it's stacked against you. And finally, to leave it on an upbeat note, I think that one of the most powerful things about storytelling is to celebrate our successes, and that positive stories can highlight what is possible, how care can be done right, what models that we can provide for the best practices, and to inspire facilities to strive for excellence. So for us, for my team, in the context of No Country for Old People and the ROAR movement, stories are really the heartbeat of our advocacy. They can, like I said, just to sum it back up, they transform abstract issues into urgent, relatable realities, and they drive awareness and, most importantly, action.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you